Great. Hananel, how are you? Where were you for Shabbat? Here in Machon Meir. How was it? Yeah. First time in the Machon, yeah. Right. Food's good enough? The food is okay? Yeah. Okay, Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. And Stephen,
Yeah.
oh, did you have a meeting last night with this fellow?
Yeah, I went to the OCT, see this, the cousin of Rabbi. So this one is Rabbi Edith.
Okay.
So we told her our story, then she called Rabbi Lau.
Yes.
And Rabbi Lau agreed to help.
It's so nice.
Yes, so
wow.
He's asked us to give her all the documents, and she will send the document to the assistant of Rabbi Lau.
Yes.
And she said she will take their words as it is. Say they will do what they say.
Wow, wow. What's the name of these people? The cousins of
Rabbi Edith.
Edith?
Edith, yes.
Edith, what's her family name?
I'm not sure because I was referred to her by this Rabbi Muti Tao.
Mutu Tao?
Muti Tao.
Muti Tao.
Yeah, she's the rabbi for the Talmud Torah in Ethiopia. Yes.
And what is she to him? She's his mother?
She's the cousin.
No, what is she to Motitao?
Motitao is the Motitao family. Fathers was I think was they are related to Rabbi Lau. Yeah, so that's what I heard. Is in when Rabbi Lau was appointed as a rabbi, the chief rabbi. So the first place he go and celebrate is this father house of the Rabbi Muti Tao. His father house. So yeah, that's how important is. This family.
Very nice, very nice. But you don't remember Edith's name, her family name?
I can't remember.
And her husband was there, or you just spoke to her?
Her husband is there.
You don't remember his name?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if you can tell it to me, that'd be good. But anyways, it's not important.
But because we got this, we got this letter from chief rabbi of the Haifa. And when the rabbi saw this letter, he said, "Why should I help? We have this letter, and this rabbi didn't do anything. Then why should I help?" But we told him that this was quite some time ago. This was at first we came to Jerusalem.
Right.
Yeah. So then his wife called Rabbi Lau and
nice.
agreed for this thing.
Very good. Okay. Hopefully that'll help. Sounds good.
I still need a letter from you.
Still? To send to her? To send?
To put inside all those documents to send to the. They said
okay.
They will make it faster into the Rabban.
Okay. They have a letter of mine already, but I could write another one.
Should I get? I don't know. Should I get from you again or not?
I don't know. That's why I don't think it's not going to be very different from the last letters.
Okay.
But I can write another letter.
Maybe my progress here.
Right. Okay, I'll try to do that. I'll write it down one more time. Okay, let's begin. We're gonna try to continue with the laws of Shabbat. The laws of Shabbat, you have them here. I have a book here. We were going through relatively quickly. We have another week or so, 2 weeks. We went through cooking, went through selecting, we did food preparation. We're in the middle of food preparation, the laws of Shabbat. I think we're ready to move ahead to the next chapter. We can't cover everything, but of course this is just to cover the most important things that you don't do Chapter 13 we're gonna look at very quickly. Although, if you look on page 252, there's no fewer than 13 melachot out of the 39. That's a full 1/3, if I'm not mistaken. Right, 13 out of 39. Of the 13 of the melachot, I have to do with textiles, with preparing clothing. Let's read through them. Gozez, tzemer, shearing wool. So you cannot cut. We're going to see that it's not only wool that you're not allowed to cut off of living animal. What else are you not allowed to cut? What is considered to be a living animal that you shouldn't cut things off of on Shabbat?
Here?
Is it not working?
I don't know. Anybody check this phone?
No, I didn't check.
You didn't check? You should check. Good morning, Israel. Good to see you.
Nowadays, I also record with my phone the shiur, like
The other shoe.
voicemail, so I don't have access to my phone. Live stream.
It's working. So you're not allowed to cut your nails on Shabbat. You're not allowed to cut your hair on Shabbat. It's like shearing the wool off of a sheep. Gozez. Milaben, laundering. We spoke about it. We're going to talk about it a little more. That you're not allowed to wash your clothes on Shabbat. Laundering is one of the 39 categories of work. Menachem, I'm reading at the top of page 253 now. Menachem is combing through the wool. Not too common that we straighten out threads of wool, but tzovea, dyeing. This is a problem. Of course, originally they were dyeing the wool, but to dye anything is a problem. Even to dye one's face. It's a big problem putting on makeup on Shabbat. It's not such a problem for us in this classroom.
No.
Some of us, maybe. But it's a big problem of tzovea. You're not allowed to dye and color things on Shabbat. The previous chapter was about food preparation. Coloring food, some rabbis say food is an exception. Food is not considered to be a textile. It's not your face. That's not prohibited, but we're trying to be careful. We try to not color even food if we have a choice. Toveh, spinning. You take threads of raw wool and you spin them into become one thread, one long string. Spinning, obviously, not too often that we have that problem. Continue. Number 6. The next melachot refer to the loom. Do you know what a loom is? It's this big machine that till today we use it. Now we use it automized electrical looms. But the hand loom is you put the weft strings and the warp strings, and you go in and out, right? To
Is that weaving?
weaving. That's right. So the coming 4 melachot all have to do with weaving on a loom. Meisech is setting up the warp threads. Oseh shtei batei nirim is making 2 loops. They're called heddles. We're not going to get into I'll show you one day. I'll bring in a picture book I have an entire book about the laws of the loom, the malachot that have to do with the loom. It's wonderful. We can go see how, till today, now people do it for fun, for crafts, to make things on the ancient loom. And, the clothes that we wear are made, industrially in these big machines but ultimately, in the end of the day, you warp you weave threads together. This is part of the malachot of Shabbat. Don't weave on Shabbat. Oreg shnei chutin is when the actual weaving itself, and potzeh shnei chutin is taking them off. When you take them off the loom, or cutting off some extra threads, that's one of the 39 categories of work, which is defined as work. As I said, 13 of the categories all have to do with making clothing. The final ones on page 254, much more common, even outside of the context of weaving on the loom, and that is kosher matir, tying and untying a knot, tofer and korea, sewing stitches and tearing in order to sew stitches. We're gonna cover that ahead in the coming chapter. Okay, there's other malachot concerning leather, and they're in the 39 categories as well, but we're going to see about them in later chapters. Okay, so we're going to focus in a little bit on the most practical of the 13 categories of work for our daily lives. And the first one, the hardest one maybe, is milaben. If you look at page 254, number 3, libun and kibus. Libun and kibus. You're not allowed to wash your clothes on Shabbat. Yes?
I read earlier number 10.
Yes.
Kosher.
Kosher.
Tying a knot.
Yes.
So when I tie a knot because of Shabbat for clothing.
Yes. We're going to have to talk about it. There's details. How to do it in a permitted way. What type of knot is considered forbidden and what type is permitted. We mentioned it the other day. Someone asked about, can I tie my shoes? And I said, we're going to talk more details, but the simple answer is, it's a bow. It's not considered to be a double knot. The double knot is the problem. But we'll see that sometimes we're even allowed to do a double knot. Only a double knot is considered to be a proper knot that is permanent. All the malachot have to be done only in a way, right? They're only called forbidden work if they're done with some sense of permanence. So, that's right. If you don't need to tie your shoes, it's even better. But you can tie. The question of tying, we're going to talk about it more. There might even be a problem with the Sefer Torah. Right? Sometimes you tie up the Sefer Torah. You've seen those gartels, the belts, the Sefer Torah. But we'll talk about the tying in a minute. Libun and kibus. So, the first stage, usually when you wash something, you put it in water, and then you add soap and you scrub it, and then you wring out the water, and you rinse it with water and wring it out. All stages of this are really problematic on Shabbat. And even taking the water out of the clothing could be a problem of libun. Libun is the general word for all those stages of laundering clothing. Don't think, a lot of people don't understand this, don't think it means only taking your entire shirt and putting it into the tub, putting in soap and water. We define the laws of Shabbat according to the actions, right? There's 39. The actions that are considered to be in these categories. And so, even if you have one spot on your shirt, did anybody ever spill wine on their shirt on Shabbat? Ooh, this is a big challenge. You're not allowed to take a little water. Everybody knows the first thing you do is you want to put some water on it. If you don't put water on the stain quickly, it'll just soak in. It might stay, and you might never be able to get it out. The best way to get a stain out is to put on water right away. 25 hours. We're not allowed to put water on. Even if there's one little stain. Oh no, the shirt is worth $100. And now if I let it, it's Friday night. Somebody spilled some wine. It's a challenge. You have to be strong and say, I have to keep the laws of Shabbat. I cannot wash my shirt even without soap. Just putting water on, that's one of the stages, we said, of libun. Cannot put water on your clothes. Even if you don't want to scrub it and you're not going to put soap on, even water by itself, you're not allowed to put on your clothing, on your stain. It's a big challenge. Sometimes women are more careful about their clothes than men. Sometimes women's clothes are more expensive than men's clothes. Sometimes it can be quite challenging not to clean off those stains on Shabbat. But you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to launder. It's one of the 39 categories of work. And all these stages are forbidden. So you cannot, there is even a question, how can I wash my hands and then dry them in a towel? I'm putting water on the towel. So there, you're only not cleaning the rag or the towel. The towel's getting even more dirty by you're using your hands. You're not cleaning it. So that you're allowed to do to dry your hands in a towel, because the towel is not dirty. The towel is clean already. You're just using it to dry your hands, and we have to be very careful to never soak textiles, clothing, in water on Shabbat. Okay, I'll take some questions. We'll go around the room. Binyamin, yeah.
Can you use salt?
It's a good question.
What?
Can you use salt? He says salt has the power that it draws out liquids. It draws out the liquids. So sometimes it might be good for a stain to put salt on. I think not. Let me double check that, but I'm pretty sure that that's considered laundering as well, because you're taking the stain out of the clothing, even if it doesn't have water. I gave the extreme example, even water without soap. This might be an example of soap without water. It's considered soap because essentially you're laundering it with salt. But let me double check that. I think it's forbidden as well.
And the sugar also, please.
Sugar?
Yeah.
Is that useful to put sugar on a stain?
The white sugar.
White sugar, yeah?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Interesting. I'll check. I doubt that it's permitted because it is laundering. I'll go around. Another question? Hananel, Pinchas, Rabbi, you're good. Aaron, you're okay. Israel, all good? Yes, Eitan.
But if you put like your wine in your shirt and you put your shirt in like a box of water and you leave it for the whole Shabbat there, you're also not allowed to do that?
Correct. That is prohibited. When you put the shirt in the water, you're committing a sin of laundering it. Even if you don't scrub it, you don't touch it, just putting it in the water is a problem. Yes, Israel.
Yeah, I think I should wash in the Shabbat, but sometimes eating is dirty in the shirt. This mix little water, clean.
Not allowed. No. It's a challenge. It's not allowed. On Shabbat, we don't put water on the clothing.
In case many dirty, how to change? Sometimes
Change your shirt. Put on a sweater on top if it doesn't look nice. But you cannot wash on Shabbat. No, it's one of the. No, can put on water or you can't launder on Shabbat. It's one of the 39 categories of work.
Some people make the food.
Right. Yeah, we all spill. And on the tablecloth also. You have a very expensive tablecloth, right? And somebody spills the wine. If you don't put water right away, maybe it'll be ruined forever. It's a big challenge. You're not allowed to put water on top.
And
Not allowed to scrub it.
make the tissue get the
So soaking up the water, we're going to see that it might be a problematic. We're not allowed to squeeze out. By taking the water out of the clothing is part of the laundry process, we said. So the problem is that when you squeeze a piece of cloth or a towel, you're squeezing the water out of the towel. So it's a problem. What you're allowed to do to soak up spills is you're allowed to place the towel on top of the spill without any pressure. Don't push down on it. Don't scrub it. You lay the towel on top, the water will absorb, and then you carefully lift up the towel and you put it aside. And that way you're not squeezing out the water out of the towel. And of course we're using only a towel which is designed for dirt. It's not something that's going to be clean. The spill is not cleaning the towel, but the opposite. And that's the only way you can clean up spills. Or you can use squeegee. You know what that is? It's usually you have a handle, and it's usually for on top of when you wash your windows, right, of the car, right? So we have a magav in Hebrew. It's called a magav. It's made out of a wiper, right? It's made like a windshield wiper, right? It's made out of rubber. It doesn't absorb anything. It's not a sponge, not with a sponge. Just a rubber can push the water aside. In Israel, sometimes you have a hole in the ground. They do sponja. You push all the water inside that little hole. So that you can do on Shabbat. But when it comes to using cloths, only when you're dirtying it, like I said, when you're washing your hands off. Okay? Yeah. Another question, yeah.
What if the water spill on the floor?
Same thing.
Like we have children.
Same thing.
They vomit on the floor.
Yes. So you have to use either a rubber squeegee to scoop it up and put it in the garbage. And if it's liquid that you're trying to get rid of and you can't squeegee it out, you can't, so you can put something on top of it, let it soak up, and then put it aside.
So we can put
Not,
on top of it.
you can put tissues on top of it without pressing down on the tissues. Pressing down on the tissues, you're already causing that squeezing. Yes?
Yesterday I was somewhere and I dropped some drink and I put just automatically I would take some paper and I put it on the table.
It's fine if you put it on without pressing down on
Also
it.
a bit.
Scrapping like that is not prohibited, not allowed, not allowed. Yeah. If you just put it on, that's good. That's good. Then you have to carefully take it off without squeezing it out when you take it off. Okay, but yes, that's the right thing to do, the way to clean up a spill. You can put something on top of it gently without squeezing it down, and then the water gets absorbed, and then you throw out the towel or the tissue, whatever it is. That's what he talks about on page 257. And on 258, he has 3 solutions that you use a cloth that's not generally wrung out to absorb. Like a napkin or paper towel, he says they're not usually wrung out, but thrown away immediately. And you can mop up the liquid. So that's the bottom line. Okay. Let's continue. We spoke about this the other day. Now, you know that the process of laundering had another stage, and it still does in some places. If you take your clothes to the laundromat, there's not only rinsing with water, soaking it, and then putting it in soap and scrubbing it, and then squeezing it out. After the clothes dry, folding it. Folding it is part of the process of cleaning the clothes. Giving it, like with starch. Some people have their clothing starched so that it sits just so, and the crease is exactly at the right place. So even folding your clothing, according to many poskim, is a big problem. When you try to fold your clothing nicely so that it stays all folded beautifully, it's a form of the process of laundering your clothes. Only problem is, what do you do with your clothes that you want to be nice for Shabbat? You put them on Friday afternoon. You enjoy the Shabbat, and then you want to go to sleep at night. You have to put on your pajamas. And if you just throw the clothes in a jumble, if you crumple them up, they'll look all dirty. Won't look nice the next day. On the other hand, if you fold them up, you might have a problem of doing something in the process of laundering. And so the solution is to lay it on top of the table or on top of the hanger, whatever it is, without actually folding it in the proper way that you normally would. But if you're just sort of putting down the clothing, you're not actually doing an act of folding. You put them down carefully so that the folds go in the right direction. But you don't actually fold. And this is, of course, a big problem with our talit.
Yes.
You finish the talit. You finish with the talit Shabbat morning. How can you fold it up? Some poskim say don't. You may see in some shuls, after Ma'ariv, Motzei Shabbat, all of a sudden people are taking out their talit. Have you seen that in some places? After Arvit, everybody's folding up their talit. What happened? Because on Shabbat they didn't want to fold their talit. So they just left it crumpled up for a couple of hours till Shabbat is over. And then on Motzei Shabbat they can fold up the talit. Others are more lenient. And they say, well, I'll do the same thing with the talit that I told you to do with your clothing. I'm not going to fold it precisely, like press it in the proper crease. I'm just going to fold it up so that it doesn't get all crumpled. I'll fold it approximately near the crease. It's not folded in the best way, but at least it won't be all crumpled. Some people do the opposite of the crease. And every day, there's usually in the talit, there is a crease, a standard way in which the talit is folded. And on Shabbat, you do it in the opposite. It still will save it from being crumpled, but it won't have the precise crease. So many different opinions about how to handle your talit on Shabbat. I had a rabbi who said to me, did you ever notice what I do with my talit on Shabbat? I said, yes, I did notice. And what did you notice? I think he explained it to me without, pulling it out of me. But he said, I'm very careful that sometimes I leave the talit until Motzei Shabbat. I don't even fold it at all. And sometimes I fold my talit in an imprecise manner or the opposite way, because I wanted to show you that there are different opinions and they're all kosher. And you don't have to do only this one opinion. You don't have to, not everybody who doesn't leave their talit is someone who violates halacha. There's who to rely on, that our folding of the talit in an imprecise fashion is far enough removed from the original folding and a process of laundry, which they had. In those days also, I think that you would fold something on a form, like they have in a press, right? A press which gets weights pressing down on it so that the crease is just so. So our folding of the clothes, putting it down, in a nice way, is like this. I'll just give you an example. This sweater. It's a nice sweater, right? But it doesn't really get ruined so much, even if I were to leave it on the table like this. Nothing will happen. It's not. You can see there's some creases. So on Shabbat, can you fold it up? You hold it like this. Maybe to fold it over like this and like this. I think there's no problem to do that on Shabbat because you're not really making it precise according to the crease. You're just being neat. Right? If I just come home and I throw my jacket down on the table, my wife will yell at me, "You're making a mess of the house. You should be neat." So there's no problem. The simplest solution is if on Shabbat you have a hook, you put it over here. If you have a hook, or you put it around the back of your chair, then there's no problem. You're not folding it, and it doesn't get creased on Shabbat. So it can be useful. Same thing if you put something on a hanger. You're not really folding it. You're just putting it away in a neat fashion. If you're not doing something that's specifically folding it according to the specific crease, then it's allowed. Okay? Let's move ahead. You're not allowed to sew on Shabbat. S-E-W. You're also not allowed to sew S-O-W. S-O-W is a fancy word for planting. Planting a seed is called to sow. S-O-W. We're not talking about planting now. Now we're talking about textiles. So we're talking about sewing. Opa, you okay? Went down the wrong way. S-E-W. S-E-W is to sow. To sow is forbidden it's one of the 13 categories of work. It's one of the 13 categories of work. So even attaching, what do you do when you sew clothing? You take two pieces of clothing, and through the stitches you put them together. So whenever you take two things and you put them together, it's a problem of sewing. That's why on Shabbat we're not allowed to use glue or tape, sellotape, masking tape. We're not allowed to use on Shabbat because it's a problem. It's like tofer. It's like sewing. You're taking two things and binding them together. If it's lasting, to staple papers together, you're not allowed. Even the staples actually go into the piece of paper like a stitch. So that's not allowed. However, the common forms, which again, most common forms of putting things together are only temporary. They're not designed to stay there. So what do we have here? What do I have here? A zipper. A zipper. Is that allowed on Shabbat? I'm like sewing. Answer is it's designed to be temporary. It's not supposed to be there forever. It's allowed. Also Velcro. Velcro was designed for the first time. It was created for the space industry. Do you know that? Velcro was created for the space shuttle in America. They wanted to stick two things together in a way which would be very strong. And so one side has hooks on it, the other side has loops or also hooks. And the plastics are so tight that they stick to each other. Obviously they're not totally tight. If you could pull it apart, the Velcro could be pulled apart. It's very useful. You have a way to bind things and to separate them easily. You're not stitching any thread inside the other. It's just hooks, one hook on top of the other. So you're allowed to pull apart Velcro or zipper or snaps or buttons. buttons, it's a form of sewing, really. You're taking the button, putting into the hole on the other side. But since it's designed to be temporary, to be opened and shut all the time, the prohibition does not. It's like, we're going to learn about that. Another type of malacha is building. You're not allowed to build a building. Can I open the door? Can I open the window? Why? It's part of the building. Again, it's designed to be opened and shut. It's like the buttons that they're designed to. That's not a permanent act of sewing. And so you're allowed to use, these techniques. Tearing is the opposite. The opposite of sewing is tearing. Tearing, many times, when you have a tear a rip in your shirt, you want to sew it up. So how do you sew it up? Usually you cut off the area which is broken, and you put on a patch, or you take the two sides that are ripped, and you sew them together. But in order to sew them together nicely, first you have to tear off the part which is uneven. So tearing is part of the process of sewing. You're not allowed to tear either. Now tearing is very common. How can we tear on Shabbat? We said the other day, you're not allowed to tear off toilet paper if you have a choice. If you have no choice, there's room to be lenient. And the reason is because the malacha, the category of work of tearing, is tearing in order to sew. It's tearing for a useful purpose. Most of the tearing that we do, opening up a tea bag, we're tearing it apart. Can I do that on Shabbat? I want to get out the tea. The answer is yes, because I'm not tearing in order to build. I'm tearing to get to the food or to get to the product, whatever it is. So you're allowed to tear if it's not constructive. It's destructive. This is destroyed. This is garbage now, right? So destructive tearing for the sake of using something on Shabbat is allowed. So if you have a package of plastic spoons, comes in a plastic bag, right? I want the spoon. You can tear off the plastic and take out your spoons. All these plastic wrappings, you're allowed to tear them off because that tearing is not constructive tearing, it's destructive tearing. One of the rules of the Malachot of Shabbat is that they're only forbidden if it's constructive work, not destructive work. And so you can tear open a bag of sugar, you can tear open a bag of potato chips. Because all that tearing is not constructive but destructive. There's only a tiny problem, and that is sometimes there's an additional malacha. You may not have noticed it from where you're sitting, it's so far away. But there's letters on top of the packaging. And when I tear apart the packaging, I've erased the letters. Or I've taken a word and split it into two. That's another law that you're not allowed to write or to erase. So we try to avoid that on Shabbat. So if you can, tear where there's no writing or even a pattern. If it's a pattern, a picture of like on top of the wines, many times you have a picture of a cluster of grapes. To tear and then ruin the picture, the cluster of grapes, is a problem on Shabbat. We try to avoid it. Now, obviously, you don't intend to destroy the letters. I'm not trying to erase anything. I just want to get my food. I just want to get the product from inside. And so, if there's no way, like sometimes they write everywhere, or there's a pattern on the entire bag, if you can't, you try to tear it in between the words so that there's no destroying of letters. But if you can't, you don't intend to cut the words, you don't intend to erase the letters, and if your intention, and it's also destructive, you're not actually The erasing letters is similar to what we said here. You erase the tearing. What's only forbidden is if you erase letters in order to write there, in its place, other letters. So if your intention is destructive, and you're not intending in any way to write or to use the wrapper, and if you don't have a choice, you can even tear the packaging where there are letters, because it's unintentional, it's not intended, and it's a distractive act. And so and you want the food for Shabbat, the law is you're allowed to open packages, even if by accident some letters will get destroyed. You try not to, but it's really something done not in the normal way for a destructive purpose, and therefore it's not prohibited. Yes?
But also about toilet paper that if you have a toilet, you know that you rip it off, but they say it's allowed if you rip it off in the middle of the paper.
It's better, but it's not allowed. It's allowed if you have no choice. So when you tearing toilet paper, again, we'll go back to that example. When you tear it off, it's not because you want to use both sides of the toilet roll. You want to use only one side. That's not the standard tearing. As I said, the standard tearing is when you have a cut in your shirt, you want to tear it so you can sew up the two sides. You want to tear so that the tear is nice and even, so that you can then sew it up. So the tearing is not the standard type of tearing, which is forbidden. Also, of course, you're doing it for the sake of hygiene, and that's called kavod habriot, honor, respect, human dignity, we call it in English, to be able to clean oneself. So if you have no choice, you are allowed to tear off the toilet paper. Now the toilet paper comes with perforations, lines, right? Cut it, pre-cut.
Yes.
So that's more of a problem, to cut along those lines. Because there's another melacha about leather, which we didn't learn about yet. We mentioned it once, and that is when you process leather, you cut it to measure. To cut it to a specific measure. So cutting things to a specific measure is similar to cutting the leather, which is the original melacha of preparing leather. And so we try to avoid cutting to a specific measure. Those perforations, that's a specific measure. They put it there so that it's easy for you to cut, and then you should be able to take one slice, another slice, one piece of paper, and then another piece of paper, and it should come off very nice and neat. So it's cutting any time you want to open a package. If there's a perforated line where you're supposed to cut, not good for Shabbat. You should, if you do need to open it, as I said, you're allowed to. You're just destroying the packaging. You're not creating anything. But try not to open it on the perforated edge, because that would be too close to precise cutting in a precise way, in a measured cutting. Measured cutting is one of the 39 categories of work. So if you don't have any other toilet paper, they didn't bring in a package of tissues, or they don't know about this law, you need to wipe yourself. Kavod habriot. So if you can wipe yourself with water, that's better. But if you don't have water either, and all you have is toilet paper, so there's room to be lenient, to cut off the toilet paper, not on the perforated edge. Other people say, there's another solution. Take a look on the top of page 267. Some people say you should do it with a shinui. Shinui means a change in the normal way. Normally you would use your hands to tear off the toilet paper. This time you don't want to be doing the action in the normal way, so use your elbows. Somehow try to cut off the toilet paper using your elbows. There's another solution. Sometimes I've seen people do. It's a little bit strange, but so you wipe yourself without tearing off the toilet paper. And then, of course, you put the section that you wiped with into the toilet bowl, and then you flush the toilet. When you flush the toilet, it gets separated. Right, the part that's connected to the water, it's going to be pulled down into the toilet, and then the rest will be not dirty, and you can roll it back up into the toilet roll. So if you really want to, you can avoid the tearing in that way. So you tear in an indirect way. But as I said, if you find that it's impossible to do any of those, you're allowed to tear the toilet paper. Okay?
But you can prepare everything before Shabbat.
Always best. Always best.
Also about the toilet papers, I used to take a number of pieces and put it on the toilet.
Sure.
Just take it.
That's right. That's right. Be prepared. And were you a Boy Scout?
I have been.
Oh, you see that? What's the motto of the Boy Scouts? Be prepared.
To help others.
Also, be prepared.
And pre-prepared.
Be prepared.
Yes.
Be prepared. Very
The
good.
movie liking?
What about it?
Sing it, Scar. Be prepared.
Is that right? Okay, nice. Okay. Now, many of you don't have little children right now, but maybe you will, or maybe you'll have grandchildren. Maybe you'll be helping out your friends who have little children. Nowadays, most people in the world use diapers that have adhesive strips. They have tape to close the diapers and to open them. We just said before that's a problem of sewing, and taking them out would be a problem of the opposite of sewing, of tearing. How can you tear apart? So if it would be Velcro, it would be better. But some of them have Velcro as well as sticky tape. So sticky tape is a little bit of a problem on Shabbat. Also using a Band-Aid, plaster. Can you use a plaster on Shabbat? Yesterday my son was cutting salad and he cut his finger. So I said, go get a Band-Aid. How could I tell him? Take the Band-Aid, you're taking off the little plastic and it attaches it to your finger. It's sewing. So obviously, it's not ideal, but we allow it. Why? Because you're sewing to your body. It's not stitching two pieces of clothing together. It's much better to attach it to your body than it is to attach it to itself. If you take the Band-Aid, sometimes it goes around your finger if you have a small finger, and you attach it back onto the Band-Aid. So then you're really attaching two parts of, it's not quite cloth, but plastic, but you're attaching it together with this glue. The glue is like sewing. So it's not ideal, but if you can, attach it to your body. If you can't, it's also allowed because it's really designed for a short time. And it's for human dignity, again, where you need to keep your clothing clean, you don't want to be bleeding everywhere. So there's room to be lenient. He even says here on the top of page 270 that one may use sticky notes. These over here, I want to show you where you are in your book. Can you do that on Shabbat? Uh-oh, I'm sticking it. He says it's designed to be moved. You move ahead to the next page, you put it over there. So it's like using Velcro, and that's a nice heter of Rav Melamed. Okay, so we covered Tofer and Korea, and but the truth is, by the way, by diapers, some rabbis say you have to pre-open the diapers before Shabbat, because that sticky tape, it was made in the factory, right? They had, right? Let's say this is the diaper. So it was stuck here, and then when you want to use it, you open it up. But this was stuck here for many months, many years sometimes even, the factory, till it comes to your use and you want to use it. When you open up for the first time, you're opening up something which was permanently put there, not permanently, but long term. And it's not something that's just for, so when you put it on your baby, it's for a couple of hours, usually. And so that you could say it's temporary. But opening it up that first time might be a problem. My brother, I remember when his children were little, every Erev Shabbat, he would pre-open all the diapers. They imagine how many we're going to use over there. There's other rabbis who are more lenient, and they say, even in the factory, they didn't intend to stick it there for the long term. As far as they're concerned in the factory, they're happy if they sell it to you the next day. They want you to use it right away. They don't intend for it to be there for years. That's not their goal. Their goal is not to stick it there permanently. And then for when you lift it up, you're not unsticking it from a permanent place. And so the Rav Weinberg has a heter and says you can use the diapers and open them up. What you should do though is be careful. When you finish using the diaper, the baby soiled it. When you take it off the baby, usually you want to close it up so that it doesn't stink, or so it doesn't get other things dirty. So you take those same sticky tape and you stick it and close it up. That way it smells a little bit less. That might be a problem on Shabbat. On Shabbat, you're not allowed to do that. Shabbat, take a plastic bag and put it inside so that it doesn't smell. But don't use the sticky tape, because that you want to be there in the garbage. Environmentalists tell us that the diapers stay there for a long, long time in the bins, in the garbage dumps. The diapers are not so biodegradable as they should be. There's a lot of plastics there. But so using the tape in a manner which is going to stay that way for a long time, that's closer to permanent sewing. Like we said, using glue is like sewing. So that's the problem with diapers. And we're going to move on to tying knots and untying knots to finish chapter 13.
But some of
Yeah.
the diapers come with like something like Velcro.
Velcro's better. Velcro's much better, but usually they have a combination of Velcro and sticky stuff. But there's room to be lenient, but not to put them back afterwards. That's the bigger problem. Okay, page 270. Tying knots. What's going on, Aaron? You're okay there?
The title of number 11 is very interesting.
Number 11? Which was that?
Korea.
Aha, not good. Korea. The country. North or south? Korea in Hebrew is to tear. To tear. We talked about all the tearing. So, in yeshiva, sometimes they use plastic tablecloths which come on a roll. So you have to tear them from before Shabbat, so that you don't do the tearing on Shabbat. With the scissors or without the scissors, you shouldn't be tearing. If necessary, you have no choice. He says here, he doesn't actually give a heter for tearing the tablecloths. Essentially, by your tearing the tablecloth off the roll, you're making it usable as a tablecloth. So you're not allowed to tear the tablecloth. To measure, also, you measure it according to the size of your table. So you should avoid that. And if necessary, use the tablecloth while it's on the roll. Like I said with the toilet paper, you use it while it's on the roll. Don't tear it off. Tearing it off so that it's usable is a bigger problem. Okay, let's go ahead to the problems of kosher and matir. So, tying a knot. The Talmud gives an example of tying knots. It goes to ships. Sailors tie knots all the time, right?
Which Amud?
Page 270.
Thank you.
4 types of knots. You see that on the bottom, page 270? Michal, will you read for us the 4 types of knots?
The four types.
The bottom of page 270, where the numbers. Number 1, start with number 1, yeah. 270.
A strong and durable knot that is not meant to ever be undone. Tying such a knot is prohibited by Torah law. Examples of this type of knot include the knots of tefillin and knots of tzitzit. One should be careful to avoid tightening tzitzit knots on Shabbat. A knot that has an element of permanence, like a knot that one plans to leave intact for a week. Tying such a knot is rabbinically prohibited. Similarly, a professional knot tied by a craftsman, even if it's meant to last less than a week, has an element of permanence, and the sages prohibited tying it on Shabbat. A temporary knot which is meant to last for less than a week and is not a professional knot. One may tie such a knot on Shabbat. Knots that are so weak that they are not even categorized as knots. Examples include a single knot and a bow. Type used to tie shoelaces. One may use such knots to tie things together, even for an extended period of time.
All right. The laws of untying knots are parallel to those of tying them. So if you can't tie a knot, you can't untie it either. There's a problem. What happens? Which knots are considered prohibited? If you look ahead, skip ahead to page 272, one may not tie a double knot if he plans to untie the knot, even if he plans to untie the knot on the same day. This is a strong knot, can remain intact for an extended period. It's comparable to the knot of a craftsman. And sometimes, so whenever you want to tie a double knot, it's a problem. Except, he says here, when a woman ties her headscarf, sometimes you tie a double knot, which is not pulled too tight. Also, when you tie a knot in if you have a coat, an overcoat that has a belt, sometimes people tie it in a double knot. That may be allowed even though it's a double knot. But in general, you never should tie a double knot on Shabbat. If by accident, sometimes you try to tie your shoes and you're trying to tie a bow, but it gets mixed up and you tie the double knot by accident. Some people say you're not allowed to untie it on Shabbat. Here he says, if you're not going to be able to sleep because you can't get your shoes off, this double knot was not tied on purpose. And so if it was created by accident, you're allowed. There's a chair here for you if you want. There's a chair for sure. Josh, no problem. Welcome. Give him a book even. Give the man a book. He came all the way out of the cold. Looks like he came from the North Pole. That big coat. So give the man a coat. Give the man a book, I mean. In any case, so if you do get a knot by accident, you're allowed to untie it if you need to. Now sometimes, even one knot can be considered strong. When is tying one knot strong? When you're not tying two things together, but you have one string, and at the end of it, you want to make a knot. Some people say that's a big problem. Tying the end of a tzitzit string. Sometimes the tzitzit strings, they start to fray, and they become apart. So one of the suggestions people do is you go like this. You tie a little knot at the end, and then it won't come out. Doing that on Shabbat is a problem, even though it's one knot, because it's permanent. It could stay forever. This knot, even though it's one knot, if it's designed to be there forever, if it's so strong, it might be prohibited. And so we try to avoid that as well. It says here on page 273, one may not use a tight knot to tie a plastic bag with food in it. But one may use a bow tie or tie the bag handles together with one tie. If you're tying two bag handles together, it's just one, it'll come out eventually. It's not really a permanent knot. Okay? Let's say what is the problem, which is even with the Sefer Torah. The Sefer Torah has a belt on it, right? Nowadays, a lot of the Sefer Torah belts have Velcro. We said that's the best. There's no problem with Velcro on Shabbat. They're just hooks hooking into each other. You can unhook them as well. But what if you have, sometimes they have clasps, like a metal clasp. One goes into the other. That's also, why do they use that? Because it's a problem to tie the knot on Shabbat. If it's a regular belt which you just tie up, and then you want to make a double knot, that's a problem. So it's really not a problem on Shabbat morning. Why? Even if you make a double knot, it's not so tight. And when are you going to open it up? If you close up the Sefer Torah from reading the Torah in the morning, when are you going to open it up again?
Monday.
Mincha. Mincha, that's just a couple of hours. If it's not something that's going to last for a whole day, it's not considered to be a permanent knot. But the problem is what happens after Mincha? After Mincha, you have to tie it up, and the next time you're going to read the Torah is on Monday. That's more than 24 hours that the knot is going to stay. And so that's why you have to avoid doing a double knot. Even when you wrap up the Sefer Torah, when you tie it up, you should tie a bow knot if you have enough for space. Or you just wrap it around and tuck it in. See some people, they do that. They don't actually make a knot because they don't want to create a knot on Shabbat. If it's going to stay for longer, then that's when it becomes a problem of doing a double knot. Okay. I think that's it for tying and for the textiles. We're going to move ahead to chapter 14 and finish the book so that we can move on to volume 2 soon. We mentioned the issue of gozez, personal grooming, so you're not allowed to cut your nails, some people say, now this is something on page 279, it may be a problem even to brush your hair on Shabbat. Luckily, I don't have that problem.
What about popping a pimple?
Popping a pimple is a problem. It's a problem on Shabbat. You can't remove a wart, cutting it off in the normal way. Popping a pimple might even be another problem, but you really should try not to remove anything from your body on Shabbat. What about brushing your hair?
Brushing your teeth.
Teeth, hopefully none of your teeth are going to fall out. Right, we're talking about pulling something off. That's a different problem of brushing your teeth on Shabbat because you're maybe whitening your teeth. The biggest problem with brushing your teeth, other people say there's a problem that you're squeezing the water out of the toothbrush. Our toothbrushes are not so, they're made from synthetic materials. They don't hold water in any case. The biggest problem with brushing your teeth is that many people's gums bleed. You're causing your gums to bleed on Shabbat. And that's one of the 39 categories of work. Shochet, to draw blood. Drawing blood is prohibited on Shabbat. Even if you like to cut yourself, don't on Shabbat. Chas v'chalila. One shouldn't cut oneself at all. But brushing teeth is more problematic. But pulling off a scab, causing you to bleed is also a problem. Also, it's a problem of gozez. So what about brushing hair? For women, many times, they have long hair. If you don't brush your hair, they'll get knots. Hair gets knots in it. The problem is that when you brush your hair, for most people, some hairs get pulled out. Pulling out the hairs is gozes. You're removing the hairs from a living being. Hopefully you're living. So you really have a problem of brushing your hair on Shabbat. If you look on the bottom, page 279, it says, one who wishes to make one's hair neater may use a special brush with soft or widely spaced bristles, so that there's a reasonable chance that it will not pull out hair. Then, even if it does happen to pull out hair, it does not violate malacha. That is because his intention is not to pull out hair. Hair will not necessarily be pulled out, and the brush is not muktzah. So, you can buy a special brush. Usually it's called a baby brush. The bristles are so soft that it never pulls out hair. It's really just like smoothing your hair. And only that type of, using a comb though, it's going to pull out your hairs on Shabbat. So most Orthodox Jews who know this, who know better, you can use your fingers to straighten up your hair. I can't really show you. But I can show you on my beard. I'm not allowed to pick out, even if I see there's one hair which is longer. Can't pick it out on Shabbat. It could be it's only prohibited rabbinically because the original shearing of sheep was with implements, with tools. If that's considered the normal way, just plucking here and there is not necessarily. But the problem of taking care of your hair, you have to do it very gently so that you're not, for sure, like brushing it with a regular hairbrush for most people, it's for sure going to remove some hairs, and that's why you're not allowed to use a normal hairbrush. You have to use a soft brush or just straighten your hair out with your hands. That's why a lot of women, before Shabbat, if they have long hair, they'll make a braid. Before Shabbat. Because on Shabbat, making a braid is another problem. You're braiding, that's like weaving, and that's like building. You're building a what's that called? A bun, right? Or making a braid. That is a problem on Shabbat. It's similar to building. And there's even a problem. My son has a problem. I told him to be careful about it, but there's a lot of Hasidim have this problem. What am I talking about? People have peot, have long peot, they curl them. Shabbat. Look at Michael Aryeh's beautiful peot. They're curled, they're wrapped. Michael Aryeh, you see? Can you do that on Shabbat? It's a problem. Because you're braiding them. You're creating a braid that's like weaving, and it's like creating a structure. And some people say that if it's already been twirled beforehand, and you're just sort of strengthening it, there's room to be lenient, as long as you're not creating a new structure. But you're not allowed to create this new structure with your hair by braiding. And of course, you have to worry about that you might pull out some hairs. You got to be careful. People who stroke their beard, right? Rabbis, many times, are stroking their beard when they think. You have to be careful. If you pull too hard, you'll be pulling out some hairs. Not allowed on Shabbat. Yeah.
I think on Shabbat, we meet Hashem with beauty. Forbidden to braid hair or the makeup, the one cannot be perfect to meet Hashem. And then I think that's a problem.
I agree. I think you have a good question. We have two values which are conflicting. On the one hand, we're supposed to dress up for Shabbat. Kavod Shabbat is to have nice clothes, that everything should be neat. Also the table, you want to set the table, your clothing should be not creased and not crumpled, and your hair should be nicely done up, and your face should be done up for women. It's a value, you're absolutely right, that it's part of honoring the Shabbat, is that you make everything pretty and beautiful for Shabbat. But there's another value. The other value is the Torah told us not to do work on Shabbat. And we have very precise definitions of what's considered creative work. We said, what was that in Chinese the other day? Creative work?
This is not work.
So the definition of work, we follow these 39 categories of what was considered to be what everybody was doing when they were building the temple, building the Mishkan. And these categories of work are defined as creative acts, works of creative act. So when we make ourselves pretty, we also have to hold up the other value, not doing any of these 39 types of work. Dyeing, pulling out the hairs, sewing, all these types of acts are categorized by halakha as creative work. So it's true, we have two conflicting values. On the one hand, we want to make things beautiful for Shabbat. On the other hand, we have to do it in a way which doesn't violate work. Right? We have a positive commandment and a negative commandment. The negative commandment is do not do any type of these. What is defined by the sages as work is a very clear definition of the acts, even though it might not be hard. Right? Work is something, oh, I'm sweating, right? Oh no, that's hard work. That's not the way it's defined according to halakha. It's not a question of effort. It's a question of these specific acts which are listed, 39 types of acts. And if the act includes dyeing, coloring your face in a prohibited way, we're going to talk about now how it's permitted, because it is a value. You want to be pretty. You have to do it without violating the prohibited act. Same thing with brushing hair. I didn't say don't brush your hair. I said brush it in a way which you're sure that no hairs won't get pulled out. Use a soft brush. Use your hands. Okay? Make your hair braided from before Shabbat so that on Shabbat, even when you take out the braid, it looks beautiful. So we have to try to keep both values. We don't want to have only one and not the other. We want to be beautiful for Shabbat, but it has to be without violating any of the prohibited acts of work. So how do you put on makeup? Let's take a look. Page 281. If you look on the bottom of page 281, it says the prohibition on wearing makeup is one of the most difficult to follow. Not for anybody sitting in this room, probably. But for our better halves,
And you got like punch in the face, and with
it could, sometimes, that's right. Sometimes you need to put up makeup. And if you're used to putting on makeup every day, some women put on makeup every day, they don't feel that they can go out in public without putting on makeup. It's a serious problem. It's a serious problem. We really want them to have a beautiful day of feeling beautiful as well. And that's why we try to find the leniencies. The problem is of Tzoveya is less of a problem when the material doesn't stick to the body, when there's no adhesive element, like sometimes the oils, what makes it stick to the body. So there's special makeup which is made, which is just more powder without any oil inside, and then you can splash it on your face. Put the women can put the makeup on their face. If it doesn't stick, it'll stick for a short time, but it's better than nothing. So right, nail polish. That's a problem because it sticks to your nails, and you're dying. You're coloring your nails. Of course, many times women are going to use a cotton ball. You can't soak a cotton ball in water and squeeze it out. That's a problem with sechita. We spoke about that earlier. And so there's special makeup which is made, which it just stays on the surface, but it doesn't cling to it. And so you can buy special Shabbat makeup if you need to. But other than that, it's more of a problem. It's a problem to put on makeup.
Rabbi, can we use the wet tissue?
A wet tissue. It's a problem to use a wet tissue. Yeah, to wet it because you're gonna be squeezing it. You'll be squeezing it by every time you touch that tissue. It's so wet. Usually the water just is coming out of it. You should not use a wet tissue on Shabbat. Now, what about perfume? There is a problem with personal grooming, and that is, we mentioned before brushing your teeth. We said a few problems with brushing your teeth. The main problem is the problem of having your gums bleed. But other than that, what about the toothpaste? Can you take here this cream? I have hand cream here. Comes out. It's you see, it's not liquid. This is a cream, right? It's a glob on my finger. Now I mush it and I smear it into my hands. This is a problem on Shabbat. It's called mimareach, smearing. And the goal of mimareach, it was used when they were making the skins for the temple. They would smooth out the skin, and creating a smooth surface. Either then they were scraping it with a knife, scraping the surface of tanning the leather, but also if you put a cream on top and you smooth out the surface that way, it's a problem on Shabbat. So you're not really allowed to use creams like this on Shabbat. Liquid is not a problem. Just putting liquid, we put water on our hands all the time, but even oil. Putting oil, if it's a liquid on your hands, it's no problem. It gets absorbed into the skin. It's not designed to make a covering, a smooth covering. And so it's not called mimareach. But if it's a cream, it's more of a problem.
So what's about brushing your teeth?
So brushing your teeth with toothpaste.
Liquid stuff.
So some people are smart. They say you're not allowed to use toothpaste. Some rabbis say, what are you doing? You're smoothing the toothpaste onto your teeth. You're creating a beautiful layer on top of your teeth, which protects it. And that's a problem of smoothing that toothpaste. The toothpaste is similar to this cream in that it's a glob, right? It's not liquid. And so using the toothpaste like this and then smearing it all over your teeth. I'm not going to put this on my teeth. It's a problem on Shabbat. Many rabbis say it's prohibited, most rabbis say it's prohibited to use toothpaste on Shabbat because of this problem of smearing. Some rabbis allow it. Rav Ovadia Yosef is lenient. And he says it's not quite similar to making, the teeth are smooth anyways. Really, you're just temporarily you want to get the good taste in your mouth, the good smell, getting rid of the bad smell. You're not actually, there's no problem. But those who are stringent, they say if you have liquid toothpaste, a special toothpaste you can buy, which is liquid, and liquid is not a problem, according to most poskim. And of course, you can use also mouthwash, which is a liquid. You rinse your mouth on Shabbat. If you're not going to use toothpaste, you should use another method of cleaning your mouth. Otherwise, you have a bad smell. Bad smell. That's not a problem for yourself. It's a problem for your neighbor, for your roommate, for the person you're sitting next to in the shul. If he has a bad smell, you're ruining his Shabbat. And so you have to use one of the permitted methods of cleaning your mouth for personal hygiene on Shabbat. Also, what about deodorant?
Yeah, the roll-on.
Deodorant. If it's a stick deodorant that you scrape and you rub it onto your skin, that's a problem on Shabbat. It's memareach. You're smoothing this material onto your skin and creating a film. That's not allowed on Shabbat. What do? Use liquid. Liquid can either be in the form of a spray or it can be in the form of a roll-on. Roll-on, it's actually liquid inside that just slowly rolls onto your body, and that's allowed on Shabbat.
It's not allowed.
It's not allowed the stick, or if it's a cream type of thing. Also perfume. You're allowed to use it if it's liquid or spray. That's allowed on your body, not on your clothes. Okay. On your clothes is another problem. That's a different problem with molid. But on your...
Stay longer, right? I mean, for the cloth, it stays longer.
Also, it stays longer. And also, it's... putting liquid onto clothing is always going to be a problem of melaben, of washing the clothes. We said that before. Liquid on textiles, you're really in dangerous grounds, close to... even using soap. Aftershave? It's like perfume, essentially. So it's liquid, it's no problem. It's no problem. You can use aftershave on Shabbat. But washing your hands with soap, a bar of soap, also you're smoothing the soap onto your skin, and the bar gets smooth as well. For a few seconds, it's like you're smoothing. So many poskim prohibited using bar of soap. Liquid soap is less of a problem because it's, as I said, it's a liquid. It's not creating a film, and it's best to be stringent and not use bar soap on Shabbat, only liquid soap. Luckily, there's some rabbis which allow you to use baby wipes. Baby wipes, the problem is that maybe you're squeezing it out. You said, can I use a wet tissue? And I said, no. But a baby wipe, well, there's such little amount of liquid in there, and you're not really intending to take out the liquid. You want the liquid which is in the wipe, within there's the common custom is to use wipes on Shabbat, as long as they're not dripping with liquid, then you have more of a problem. Your goal is simply to wash the area, and the wipe remains damp, so you're not interested in squeezing out the water from it. You just want to use the dampness which is in it. So most people allow you to use baby wipes on Shabbat. And we talked about brushing teeth. Yes, somebody had a question here. Somebody wanted to ask a question.
Avravi. I still have a question about the aftershave.
Yeah.
I heard it's not allowed to use it on Shabbat.
Yeah, why not?
Like Yom Kippur. It's forbidden to use aftershave and all these perfumes.
Yom Kippur?
Right?
No, that's every week is not Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is only once a year. Right. Yom Kippur, you're not allowed to bathe. You're not allowed to anoint oneself. You're not allowed... Shabbat, you're allowed to. You're just not allowed to do any of these types of work, these acts which are considered work. Smoothing and grooming by pulling out hairs. If you're not doing any of those acts, you don't have to suffer. On Yom Kippur, you're supposed to suffer. On Shabbat, there's no problem putting on perfume, and if it's liquid, and putting on deodorant, and putting on using mouthwash and using aftershave, all those, as long as it doesn't fall into any of the 39 categories of forbidden acts, it's allowed. It's even a good idea. It enhances your enjoyment of Shabbat, or your wife's enjoyment of Shabbat, hopefully. Okay? Okay. Bathing. Bathing and swimming. Question. Yes, Josh. Yeah.
What about flossing?
Flossing it's a good question, because the act of flossing itself, really, you're not smoothing anything. There's no water involved, so you're not squeezing anything. Why should it be prohibited? The answer is, well, two things. If you have to tear it off, the tearing is a problem. But the biggest problem is what I said with toothbrush as well. What's the problem with brushing your teeth? The bleeding. Many times when you clean close to your gums, the gums start to bleed. And that is a problem on Shabbat, to cause yourself to bleed. That's why flossing could be allowed if you use a pre-cut piece of floss. Sometimes they even have these little pieces of floss on a stick. Mm-hmm. Have you seen those? Yes. But there's a tiny little piece of floss on a piece of plastic. You can use that on Shabbat as long as you don't cause your gums to bleed. Many times women go to the mikvah on Shabbat. The chances of that happening, what are the statistics? 1 in 7. Right? A woman's cycle could fall out on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, or Shabbat, whenever she's ready to go to the mikvah. So she can go to the mikvah on Shabbat, but she has to prepare for the mikvah by making sure there's no pieces of dirt on her body, even between her teeth. So this is a very long discussion. How can a woman prepare for the mikvah on Friday night? It's best if she prepares before Shabbat starts, but if she didn't, she has to make sure that there's no dirt between her teeth. Can she use floss? So these special pre-cut pieces of floss on the little sticks are very useful. If you have to floss on Shabbat because you have to make sure a woman is not allowed to go into the mikvah until there's nothing separating her body from the water, even little pieces of dirt between her teeth. Also, we mentioned about combing your hair on Shabbat. If you have a knot, if a woman has a knot between two hairs can't go to the mikvah because the water is not going to be touching each and every little strand of hair. So it's a problem. A woman should really try to be ready before Shabbat starts to get all the knots out of her hair. So there's reasons, as we said before. It's conflicting values. Of course we want to enjoy Shabbat, but we have these categories of what's considered to be forbidden acts that we're not allowed to do on Shabbat. Okay, bathing. Let's just finish it up for today. I've finished the chapter and finished the book. You have a question, Josh?
There's another question on grooming.
Grooming, yeah.
What about bandages? Like if you have even a small one, a Band-Aid, or maybe a diaper?
We talked about it before you walked in today. So you can read the chapter and we'll talk about it after class. I want to finish with just 2 minutes left to talk about bathing. In general, the sages forbade bathing in hot water because you're probably going to heat up the water on Shabbat. And we saw that today, even turning on the hot water in many houses, if you turn on the hot water, cold water is going to come in and it's going to get heated up. There's a problem of using hot water on Shabbat. Even if you don't use that type of hot water, the sages said we don't bathe the entire body in hot water on Shabbat. There's room to be lenient if you have lukewarm water that's not going to get heated up, and you're not doing your whole body, washing your hands and your face. There's other issues with when you bathe, you dry yourself off with a towel. Sometimes you squeeze out the towel. That's a problem. What do you use when you bathe? Usually use soap. Bar soap, we said, is a problem. So you can avoid some of the problems by using liquid soap, by being careful not to squeeze out the towel, by not squeezing out your hair. But if you don't have an eruv, there could be problem of carrying the water. The standard practice is that Orthodox Jews do not bathe for 25 hours. On Shabbat, we do not take baths and we do not take showers. In cases of extreme need, like it's a boiling hot day and it's very hard for you, you're going to suffer. There's room to be lenient. If you avoid all the difficult problems, the act of squeezing, the act of using that soap, which is prohibited, or, of course, the biggest problem is not to use water, which is going to be creating more water, get heated up, cooking. You're cooking the water on Shabbat. If you use the standard water heaters, if you use a solar-powered heated water, then there's more room to be lenient. Again, the only problem left is that the sages prohibited you from bathing on Shabbat. If you don't do your whole body, then you're not violating the sages' prohibition. And so, if you have a specific circumstance where you need to, if you don't wash your entire body and you're careful about all those things, you can take a partial shower on Shabbat, but we try to avoid it. That's the standard practice. When it comes to Yom Tov, and when you have a few days in a row, that's when you need to really learn the laws, and there it might even be advised to bathe or to shower. Showering at home is not the same thing as you going into the pool, and going into the pool is not the same thing as going into the bath. And so there's room to be lenient, but the standard practice is we don't bathe on Shabbat. You take your shower before Shabbat, get yourself ready, and then you last the 25 hours, hopefully, without too much discomfort. For most people, that's doable. I know some people, they really have a hard time with this, because every morning they have to shower. Every morning they shower, every morning, except for Shabbat. If you can, try to adjust and get yourself used to that on Shabbat you don't take showers. That's the standard custom. Somebody has an individual problem, you can speak to me, we can talk about it, how and when it's permitted to be lenient. Okay, we'll stop here for today. B'ezrat Hashem. Tomorrow we're moving on to Book 2, Section 2. This is Volume 1, Volume 2 of Laws of Shabbat. Our brief overview of the Laws of Shabbat will continue tomorrow. B'ezrat Hashem.